You really have been one of the most appreciative audiences we've ever had at Visions, which is why we love to come back. Well, this morning, of course, we have the panel with the 3 unit people, which is as many unit people as you're going to get together at one time. My name is John Anthony Blake, aka John Levene, Sergeant Benton, between 1969 and 1974. For the next person I'd like to bring on stage to make up this threesome, the first person I'd like to bring on is my beloved Brigadier. You know him as Nicholas Courtney. Mr. Courtney, would you please come on down?
Nice to see you, and I assure you this is water. It really is, honestly, it's water, because it's very dehydrating, this hotel, the air. You know what I mean? Don't interrupt one. Okay.
Thank you very much. I wanted to know my room number, and I just had to...
Excuse me, I want to tell him something. Fish breathe in water.
I like fish.
Ladies and gentlemen, although you know who the next artist is, I'd like to just play a quick tape in a moment when I give Dave the cue of the voice of our next guest, who was one of the most famous voices in the land, back in England, in Radio Land. Would you play that first voice for the character that this next guest has made so famous? Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. No, not that one he made world famous. No, the other voice that he's known best for. You know, the voice that he made famous all over England and America? You know, the one he's known for the most?
Keep trying, John.
It's not the Navy Lark. I love these. Oh, shit. Jon Pertwee, ladies and gentlemen.
Introduction I've ever heard in my life. What the hell was that first voice?
We had 3 recordings. We had one of the Navy Lark, one of Where's Our Gummidge, and then you as the Doctor on the record.
Where's the what?
Where's Our Gummidge?
Oh, Where's Our Gummidge, yes. I gather some of you saw Where's Our Gummidge the other day. Right. Good. Okay. You liked it. Can we pop this up, Dave? I've got, as you know, I've got a cold, I've got no voice at all. Can we come up, please? Up, please. Can we have the microphone up, please? Can we have the microphone up, please? Yeah. A little bit more. How are you hearing that? Thank you very much indeed. The Nick doesn't need it.
Okay, well, you know the score, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd be kind enough, Debbie has the microphone for you to put your question into. So, are there any questions? Make them fresh, make them new, and make them plenty.
Just like John Levene.
Which one?
What, the fresh, the new, the... Yes, I have to think about that.
Good morning. This can apply to either Doctor Who or any other work you've done. What have you found to be the most emotional or challenging scene? For example, when Katie Manning left the series, that seemed like a difficult scene for Mr. Pertwee. But for any work that you've done, what's the most gut-wrenching acting that you've had to do?
Well, for my part, I'll get mine over, my back up. Mine was that scene. I thought it was awful with Katie leaving, John leaving, Nick leaving, Roger already gone. It was a very difficult scene to do in the nut hutch. And I remember that Benton, my character, was given the part of having a sing-song, and we started singing. And of course, John, and we were all upset because it was the end of our magic era. And so that was, you actually named my personal hardest scene, because I knew we were beginning to drift apart, and it wasn't a nice feeling. That's my part of it.
I think, yes, I'd go along with that. I remember that scene when Katie left in The Green Death. I was very well aware of a lot of emotion. As I remember, actually, I was sort of, when the lines concerning her farewell were going on with John and Katie, John and Katie, I was sort of in the background, so I wasn't involved with this so much, but I was aware of a tremendous electricity on the set. Another time, I think, as regards heart-wrenching, maybe that's a bit strong, was in Terror of the Zygons for me, because in Terror of the Zygons, I was convinced that was the end of the Brigadier. So I was very sad during that, so that was pretty, I suppose you'd call that heart-wrenching and emotional. I was convinced that you'd never hear of him again. Well, how wrong I was, you did, and I was brought back. Yeah, I guess that's it.
It's interesting, because it always seems to come back to the same subject, the same story. Yes, that was a very heart-wrenching moment when Katie and I split up. Katie and I were together for a few years, and we fought endlessly and adored each other endlessly. She was a complete lunatic, but the most endearing lunatic I've ever known. I talked about her yesterday. God bless you. Thank you very much indeed. This is gin. Don't think it's water. And thank you. When we did the last scene, the director called me to one side and he said, "John, what the hell do you think you're doing in this scene?" I said, "I don't know. I'm playing it the way I feel it." He said, "Precisely. Stop it." I said, "Stop what?" He said, "Come and take a look at these rushes." He said, "Don't you realize the doctor is sexless? The doctor has nothing to do with women, nothing to do with anybody. Sex doesn't come into the doctor's life. And what's going on in that scene with you and Katie has got to stop." So we had to calm the whole thing down, and I did see a bit of it, and he was dead bloody right. Yeah. Put your mic up.
Is this something I'm doing?
Come on, Dave. Put a shilling in the meter.
Mr. Pertwee?
Okay.
Anyway, I know there was a gentleman back there who had his hand up, if we're looking for the next questioner.
One.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Yes, okay.
Mr. Pertwee, how much input did the actors have in putting together their signature outfits, the Doctor Who clothes? Or did the BBC dictate to you what to wear?
What to wear? Oh, no. No, did you ask me? Was it me you asked? Yeah. No, what happened I had to be like Pat Troughton, and when I fell out of the telephone kiosk, out of the police box, out of the Tardis, the first time I was dressed in Pat Troughton's trousers and shirt and coat. Believe me, the trousers were so tight I sang in the Luton Girls' Choir. But that was very quickly over, and I went into the hospital, you may remember. What was it called? Spearhead from Space. Spearhead from Space. And I escaped by pinching clothes from doctors in the doctor's waiting room, and I stole an old velvet jacket off an eccentric old doctor, and a cape from another one, and a frilly shirt, which was very trendy at that particular time. And I put all these on for a photograph for the front page of the Radio Times, announcing that I was going to be the incumbent doctor. And I wore it, and everybody said, "Yeah, we like that, it looks great." And I said, "Well, how the hell are we going to get round this?" And we spoke to Nick in the show, and I said, "Can I keep these clothes? And can I keep this old motor car that I'd nicked?" And the brig said, "No, you can't, Doctor, but I'll get you some exactly like it." Remember that scene? And when I was Dr. John Smith, I think, first time the doctor ever mentioned his name. And that's how it came about, that I wore those clothes. We all wanted to do something different. We had the old man, the cantankerous old man in Bill Hartnell. Then you had the cosmic tramp. And so I thought I'd be the dandy, and that's why Bill Hartnell, it's called, what is it?
The Dandy and the Clown.
The Dandy and the Clown. Yeah, three doctors.
If I can just add to that, I know there was a question for John. The first uniform I had, I know you didn't ask me, but the first one, when John joined, I disliked intensely. I thought it looked like a jumpsuit. The berry didn't look awful. I loathed that, and eventually, after a year, and you had a 2-year contract, I got the courage to go to Barry Letts and say, "Barry, please, I must have a change. I feel a right old nana." So he allowed me to slightly mix military convention, but give me a peak cap and the service dress, which sort of showed me off, I think, to better advantage.
Sure did.
Okay, any more questions, please? Yes, excuse me.
I have a question, one for Mr. Pertwee and one for Mr. Levene. First, for Mr. Pertwee, are we ever going to see the second volume of your memoirs? And for Mr. Levene, you told a couple of new jokes last night at the variety show. How did that happen?
I don't know, but I'm going to see my therapist in LA on Tuesday. I don't have a therapist, by the way. We Britons tend to sort our own problems out. Which, why would you go to a therapist? He's only going to make money out of you. Okay, well, no, I don't know. I do worry about having new material, but we don't do this very often, so I figure I can get away with it just one more year.
What was my question? I can't remember.
Second volume of your memoirs.
Ah, yeah, well, the first volume was written because my show, Wurzel Gummidge, after many years, the company lost its franchise to produce it. And so while I was waiting to find a new producer, I had nothing to do, so I went up to my home in the mountains in the Pyrenees to ski. And so what I used to do, I used to work on my book, sitting on the balcony in the morning. For the whole morning I'd work on the book, and in the evening and the afternoon I'd go and ski, and it was a lovely arrangement. So I was out there for about 6 months, and that's how long it took me to write the book. But after that, I've been rather busily employed, I'm delighted to say, and I haven't had the time to write the book, because it takes a hell of a long time to write an autobiography, particularly if you're as unconscionably old as I am. It's hard to remember things way back 30, 40 years. And so suddenly, you know, you wake up in the middle of the night and you remember, you say, oh, that's it, and you write a note and do it. But if you're interested to know, David Howe, who is the writer who knows a great deal about Doctor Who, who's written probably many books. Have you seen the new book that's just come out, the 60s and 70s? You seen it? Yeah. Well, it's here, you know, they're selling it in this convention. Well, David Howe and I are working on a new book now, entirely on me and my life. Not Doctor Who, but just me and my life from the word go. So we'll cover some of the original book and go on to the present time. It comes in about 14 volumes, I think.
Actually, on the subject of John and me and my life, I do have a new joke for you. We have a show in England called This Is Your Life. You have it over here? Well, they have it in Israel too, the same program. Only over there they call it My Life, This Is Yours. Okay, thank you, man.
That's a new joke, is it? You're sure about that? Okay.
Excuse me,
okay.
John made it slightly wrong. That's an old joke. Not a new one.
Okay, get me out of this quick with another question. Thank you.
Can you hear me there?
I now see you.
Okay.
Hey, we can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Do you remember Inferno?
Yes.
Okay, how did... Let's see if I can get this straight. Okay, for the Brigadier, when you played the dual role in that episode, how... let's see. What did you think of that? As far as playing the dual role, was that real interesting for you? And how did Mr. Pertwee, how did you feel about him playing that role?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay. This one's all right. Is this one all right?
No, it's good.
It's fine. Good. Lovely. Thank you. Good. Yes, it was very interesting playing two roles, and I enjoyed Inferno. That's the reason why it's one of my favourites, because it's lovely to play a part where you're the villain and the rather nice man. So, and it's a challenge, and actually playing nasty parts are very nice indeed. They're nice to get your teeth into them. So, I don't know what to say. Oh, I think I've answered that.
You did.
Well,
I think I did.
I can just say one thing to do with my hero here. I had a scene where, as the Nazi kind of Benton, I had to give the Doctor a rough time. And it was one of those times I said, I had to either pull your hair or slap your face or push you down in a chair. And I had to do a deal, because, you know, you've got to realize that John, to me, was the man from the Navy Lark and Wurzel Gummidge. And here I was suddenly acting opposite him. And John had said to me, look, if you're going to rough me up, let's do it. And I remember you said, really push me down. And I thought, well, you know, I'm going to be pushing Mr. Pertwee around.
He loved it.
And I loved it. You know, it's really good. So when you see me sort of, you know, sit down, that was really quite real. So.
And I had the easy part, because I just interviewed him and interrogated him and was nasty and didn't have to physically touch him. I'd leave that to my underlings. So, you know, it's rather nice to sort of be nasty without hitting anyone. Talking of hitting anyone, I've got one apology to make to everyone. I don't think I was awfully good in the fight at the end. With,
no, Nick, you weren't.
You remember the fight with
Fred Flange.
The guy who played Greg in this, now his character's name was Greg, and I know him Derek Newick, that's right. I had to have a fight with him at the end, which I was, the only thing I was rather unhappy about, because it could have been much better.
I don't know whether you know, if you know, hands up those of you that have heard the story about the joke in this particular episode that we played on Nick. A lot of you have. What? I'll tell you very quickly. I've always wanted to rock the brig, but you can't rock him because he's like a bloody rock. It doesn't matter what happened. You saw that last night. I mean, he went sailing through that chaos and that Navy Lark script, which I rushed to state we never rehearsed properly. Well, you could tell. And through it all, Nick goes solidly straight on, no messing about. But Mark, we've had 150 years of radio together over the years, so it all counts. In this particular instance, we said we're going to have a joke on the brig. So we all of us got together, and the brig was wearing a black patch, and he had a scar. And so we went into makeup in the dress rehearsal, and we got black patches and scars. And there was you and Caroline, John, and myself. And we knocked at the door, the brig had his back to us, and I said, this is going to corpse him. We're at last going to get him when he turns round, you see. And so he had his back to us, and we knocked at the door, and he said, yeah, come in. And he turned round and paid no attention of any sort at all. And there we were, with the, giggling with the black patches and the scars like this. And Nick went straight on as if nothing had happened at all, which completely corpsed us. And we were very severely reprimanded by the producer. He said, what the hell are you playing at? Go and take those bloody stupid things off. And Nick said, I do forgive the class. Very funny. You can't rock the brig, so I gave up after that. But we did manage to rock them in other ways. Do you remember the silent days we wanted tea? We were in the studio. We desperately wanted a break because it's a very tiring day. And so the PA said, Caroline John's brother, he said, all right, stand by for please. Go. And I said, now look here, Joe, the thing about I want you to come. They said, hold it on the studio, please. Got trouble with sound. So they tested everything, and they said, right, go. And I said, now look here, Joe, when you come out, I said, stop. Right, take 10 minutes for a coffee.
Okay, any more questions?
Did you get to the second part of my question?
No, thank you very much.
What was the second part? It was so long ago.
How did you react to me? That's right.
Yeah.
How did I react to you? When?
When you saw Brigade Leader instead of Brigadier, I mean, I have a question. I mean, what was your reaction? How did you react to the fact that there was not Brigadier?
Yes. Next question.
There was someone down the front, I think.
Yeah,
all right, the first question is for John Levene. What the heck happened to the Tutu?
What happened to the Tutu? Well, I've given it back to John.
It's finally returning to me.
I must tell you, by the way, I stole that from Monty Python. It was an Eric Idle and Michael Palin gag where one of them was dressed as the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Eric Idle had the tutu on, and I've just because I've never been that gregarious in terms of doing things on stage, and it was such a wonderful opportunity, and Robert Llewellyn did a marvellous thing with the handbag, you know. It's just the whole idea of a guy saying, do you want to come back to my place? You know, and saying yes. So.
The gag originated many, many years ago. You've ever, balletomanes amongst you would have heard of Sir Robert Helpman, yeah? Famous ballet dancer. And there was a big show on in London. It was the Night of 100 Stars. And the curtain went up, and there was a set of a convent with a door and steps, very beautiful religious building. And a girl came on through the snow with a bundle, with a baby. And she looked at the baby, and she cried, and she wept, and she kissed it goodbye, and she put it on the steps, and she knocked on the door with a great big knocker, and she left in tears. And eventually the door opened, and there was the Mother Superior, all in Mother Superior's robes, with the whatever it's called, you know, thank you very much. Thank you, sister. And there she stood, and she saw the baby, and it was Sir Robert Helpman playing this sister. He bent down, and he picked the baby up, and cuddled it, and he turned around and walked up, and he had a completely bare ass. he was naked, the whole back of him was naked, and he walked up the steps of this wonderful set to the biggest laugh I've ever heard in my life. That's where the gag originated from.
And the second one is for Nicholas Courtney. Now, one of the things I've always loved about the Brigadier and the Doctor is the Brigadier's very wry, very sarcastic, very cynical sense of humor. And I was wondering whether that was written in or whether you had any say in your actual lines.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
My fault. Okay, let's slow down. Okay. One thing I always loved about the Brigadier and Doctor was the way the Brigadier reacted to the Doctor, you know, making all these, to him, remarkable suggestions as to the reason for all this stuff. And I was wondering whether the cynical, sarcastic sense of humor was originally written in, or whether you had any say in what lines you had to say.
Oh, I think the behaviour of the cynical, sarcastic replies, if I gave them to the Doctor, not that often. That, on the whole, was written in to start with, I think, because Terence Dix was our script editor. When I first started playing the Brigadier, we got together and, you know, we talked things over, and he talked to me off the set and sort of gradually made it easier for me. So I think that was written in to start with, and if it wasn't, as time went on, I was allowed to put in my own lines and change them if I thought they could be better, could be funnier, give them out some humanity, or indeed get a laugh from the audience without trying to get a laugh. That's true humour, you know, rising out of the situation. So it's a mixture, but I think on the whole, they were written in for me, but sometimes I wrote my own lines, like for example, in The Three Doctors, when they arrive on this planet, and they know something's desperately wrong, and the Brigadier's the first time in the Tardis, and he doesn't believe in the Tardis, doesn't trust it, doesn't want to go in it, but gets in it, has to go in it, to escape jelly babies, I think. And then he arrives there, and everyone's saying, you know, it's an awful situation going on. And the Brigadier says, no, don't worry about it. I mean, I've had a quick recce outside, and I'm fairly sure that's Cromer. Now, that's the line that I wrote, which Cromer, by the way, is an East Coast resort in England, you know, Cromer, an alien planet. But he mentioned the Brigadier, he really did. He didn't think it was an alien planet, so I didn't do it with a tongue-in-cheek or a wink in my eye. I just said straight. She'll get a laugh. I hope it did.
Yeah, it's quite right. Comedy, the best comedy is always believable. You've always got to make it. If you become unbelievable in any sort of characterization, it ceases to be funny. And I always used to go on with my mates and people I was working with, you know, saying, okay, boys, keep it real. Because it's always better that way. Play it straight and it works. Fool about with it and it doesn't. We have very little input in Doctor Who because we haven't the time. Because by the time we recorded the 2 programs, we had one day off and then we started working again on the next one. Well, the only time we had any input at all was the day of the first rehearsal, because that was the first day that we'd been able to get together with the script, which we only got the day before. And we'd have the read-through, and the writers would be there with the script editor and the producer and the director, and it was then and only then that we could say, look, I don't like that speech, it doesn't ring true, can we do this, that, the other with it? Anybody, it didn't matter who it was in the company, was able to say what they liked, what they didn't like, and once that was done, that was it, because we had no time to alter it, and so there was no ad-libbing in Doctor Who of any sort at all. When Nick said he rewrote a line, then he would do it, but if you ad-libbed, boom.
Okay then.
I guess I'm next. Question for all 3 of you as to maybe what you have been doing just recently and anything we might be able to watch to see you in the near future, and particularly Mr. Blake, if your name change and your life in America has brought you some good fortune in appearing on things, and if you're going to stay on in the U.S., what your plans are?
Well, I'm very much in love with my American lady, so I don't think I would stay in America for the rest of my life, because there are some things that an Englishman cannot get out of America. Mainly Marks and Spencer's clothes and things like that. No, I'm getting to the stage, even at my sort of youngish age, I'm rather hoping that the producing aspect of my life, I do love producing, because being given the Robert Wagner show on a plate, I mean, let's get it's not a TV show, it's a tennis and golf classic, but it gave me an awfully nice start in Hollywood, and I'm not involved in Hollywood. I mean, I'm very antisocial by nature. I mean, I don't enjoy parties, mainly because of cigarettes and things like that. But you know, if you're unto thine own self be true, I think the essence of what you're after comes out. For example, you know, I'm writing a few small scripts for people now, and I had the unfortunate moment of meeting Roseanne Barr. I say, this woman is, well, one of the guys, I say I gave a break to her, sounds awfully big-headed, but being an executive producer has wonderful little extras in it. Like, I can phone anyone in Hollywood and on Robert Wagner's back, if you like, and they immediately say yes. But I just love the opportunity of doing it and being involved. And I've actually forgotten what I was actually going to say then, but it's for battered women and abused children, of which there are so many. But all the aspects of producing, I love the energy of being a producer. So hopefully something else will come my way. I've got 3 big shows to do next year. I'm doing a big multi-projector audio-visual for a British company called The Body Shop, and which happens to be the firm my godson works for, who happens to be the son of George Levene, who was in one of the funniest shows I ever saw in England called It Ain't Half Hot Mum, which also had one of John's best friends in it. I mean, what a show that was. And I'm desperately trying to get all the English videos now. I've just had 2 episodes of Porridge given me. And it's not till you watch Porridge again, the genius of Ronnie Barker, who was in the Navy Lark with John, I've sort of forgotten where I started here, but I'm just enjoying the medium success I'm having in Hollywood. I don't mind which way it goes. I'm just happy to be there and to be with Jenny and to see my friends when they come over here. But that's about it.
Yeah, well, the next thing, what you might be seeing me in, you say there, well, probably the first thing you'll be doing is hearing me in the radio show that John and I have just completed called The Ghosts of N Space. Well, I hope they put them on cassettes, and you'll be getting the cassettes over here because you've got them on the Paradise of Death. I know, they're on sale on the convention. So that's, you'll be hearing me probably before seeing. But on the other hand, maybe you won't. I mean, for example, there's a, you know that there was a show we did last year called 30 Years in the Tardis. Well, now there's an update on that, more than 30 Years in the Tardis, which is 90 minutes. And you'll see quite a bit of me there, actually, quite a bit of me. Other than that, I don't know where else you'll see me. Depends.
He's having a rest. He's just been for a year in the Mousetrap. Didn't run very long, the Mousetrap, 43 years. Was it 43?
They're on their 43rd year now, yes, that's right.
43 years.
I told them when they started, I said I'd got to be through by November the 19th, because I couldn't come here last year because I was rehearsing. Why? I said, because I must come to Chicago and Visions, because I hadn't been before. So here I am. And on Saturday, I'm going away on my honeymoon, which I haven't had yet. So there we are.
Nick, one question, if I may ask. Did you get married in the sort of the Stuart clan's kilt at all?
No, I didn't. Actually, I got married in the suit that you saw last night, actually, during the cabaret, because actually my wife liked that suit when she saw me the first night in the Mousetrap. And, you know, and I thought it was quite a suitable suit to get married in, and saved a bit of time, you know, because I went to church in the morning, had a quick lunch, and did 2 shows that Saturday. So it saved a bit of time. It's a nice looking suit, and I bought it for the management.
He didn't, he stole it.
Stole it? No, I had to pay, I'm afraid.
The reason
but not
I'd
too
asked,
much.
The reason I'd asked is because I said to Nick, had he got married in the kilt, and I was asking him, you know, was there anything worn under the kilt? And he told me no, it was all in perfect working order. You know, just one has to clear this.
Very deep, isn't it? Very deep humour there.
I'm glad I haven't got my nerve in my tooth. Okay, another question, please.
This is for Mr. Pertwee and Mr. Courtney. You both guest starred in the Avengers series. I was hoping for some reminiscences.
Well, reminiscence, yes, I was in 2 Avengers series. One with Patrick Macnee, Ian Hendry, and Arnold Blackman when they were in it, and I was playing another, what else, someone in uniform. I think it was an airline captain, Propellant 2-3 it was called. I didn't have a very large part of that. I was flying a plane, God help me. The parts I mastered do, if I did them in real life, what would happen? And the second one was this security guard, Mr. Gifford, who is shrunk by Francis Matthews, isn't he? Yes, I'm shrunk, and I remember he gets a machine out and sort of completely shrinks me down like that. In the end, I'm hanging like this on the edge of the drain, sort of saying, you know, like the fly, help me, help me. There's this little squeaking as he shrinks and I'm getting away. I'm crawling around like a spider. Reminiscence weren't very large on that, because actually the only chap I met was Patrick Lee, because I had the scenes with him. But you see, when you film, I only had about 1 day on it. You don't meet him. I didn't meet Dinah Rigg. So the reminiscences aren't too large, except one, which will amuse John. As Mr. Gifford, I had to be a security guard, and I had to ride a very powerful motorbike. Now, I was rather alarmed with very powerful motorbikes. I'm not used to them. I sort of am a bit nervous of them. But I did, before I started filming, someone who lived opposite me, I went round on the motorbike, and sort of unadopted area, not on the main roads, to cause offence or traffic accidents. But I did a little work on that, but I really wasn't happy on it. I'm a little Vespa, you know, when I go to a Greek island, sort of chug around, that's fine. But I'm sort of, yes, large motorbikes, and what was the other one? Yes, loud noises. Brig doesn't like those.
Okay.
No, that was John.
What?
You were the Avenger.
Yeah, I was in the Avengers, yeah. Yeah, I was very lucky because Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart was working at the time, and they wanted somebody to play a Brigadier. And so I played a Brigadier, or at least it wasn't. I think it was a general, wasn't it? I played General Montgomery. I copied him. I did an impersonation of Montgomery, writing his memoirs with about 8 wind-up gramophones with horns and different records for the sound effects. It was the wildest, stupidest thing I've ever had to work at. But it was very funny. I was extremely exhausted. 2 days filming by myself, charging about, there was one very small scene, I think, with Diana. I can't remember, but it's fun. Pat McNee is a great mate of mine. It was fun working with him.
A very good book. Have you read it?
His?
Yes.
No.
Oh, J&T gave it to me last Christmas or the Christmas before.
Oh, that's
I've got it. Yeah, I'll lend it to you.
Do I?
I will.
Read that. That'd be very good. Does he mention me?
Can't remember, John, at the moment.
Not interested. Okay, another question if we may.
Mr. Courtney?
Yeah.
Acting ability aside, you've played the Brigadier with such military exuberance. Have you had any military experience in your younger life, and did you use that to model the Brigadier on, or is it just the British stiff upper lip coming through?
Well, I don't think it's only the British stiff upper lip coming through, although that may come through. No, the military experience I had in previous life was when I was in the... Sorry, I'm waiting. Okay. When I was in the army, because I did my national service, as you had to, in 1948 in those days. But I remained a private, actually, in the army. I never rose... One of the reasons I was put down as potential officer material, but you see, as soon as I joined the army, 2 weeks later, I caught scarlet fever for some reason. And because of that, it delayed me. We only had 18 months to do the service. And that delayed me, so I had to, you know, be put in an isolation hospital and then recuperation for some reason. So by the time I got over the scarlet fever, 4 months or 5 or 6 months had gone, so it was probably too late then to, you know, do the thing and go to the Warrant Officer Selection Board, WASB it was called, and then become an officer. So I stayed in the ranks, and I was quite glad I did, because it gave me the chance to observe the officers in the army, the sort of officers that you would follow, and, you know, the good officers, usually major and above with the rank. And then the second lieutenants with massive private incomes, chinless wonders, and Eton accents who you wouldn't follow anywhere, because they weren't necessarily very good officers. Well, they were doing their national service officers. I'm sure some of them were all right. So that was really where I got it from. And I suppose my father he fought in the First World War, and he was an army man, although later he was a diplomat. And he was a typical sort of army man, so I probably observed, you know, I was conscious of him. It's the genes, I suppose.
My father, as a matter of fact, was a sergeant in the army, and like me, I do a lot of running, as you know. And in fact, in the war days, my father used to do a lot of running. Of course, in those days, they called it desertion. But my father was a sergeant. He would have been proud of me, seeing me as a sergeant on Doctor Who, but he was dying. He was died. He died before.
Of course, naturally, was one of those chinless wonders that the Brigadier was talking about. I served my time in the lower deck of the Navy and then became commissioned. And when I was commissioned, because I'm of a French family, in my papers it was written Pertwee de Layeveau was my true name, and a French officer came and saw some parade, and he said, your name is Pertwee? And I said, yes, sir. He said, I want to see you in the office because there is a very important engagement that I want to talk to you about. I thought, here goes. Never volunteer for anything. Doesn't matter what it is, especially if it was coming on to 3/4 way through war. And I thought, no, this is a bad time. He's talking French. He wants me to go over there. No. I said, no way. So I said, oh no. I said, there's not much point, sir. My French is très mal. Je ne parle pas bien. No, terrible. Mon français is terrible. And he said, it certainly is. But it says you are from a French family. I said, yes, I know, but I've forgotten it all. He said, okay, I will speak later. Very strange. He went up to another officer, and he said, is your name Rankin? And he said, yes, sir. He said, come with me, Rankin, you speak French. And he said, oh, oui, je parle un petit peu, oui. And he went into the office, and I thought, the fool, the idiot, he's volunteered to a job which is obviously going to be to go over to France. And he came out, and I went over to him, I said, all right, Tony, come on, tell me, what was the job? He said, resident naval officer in Tahiti. That was absolutely true, and he was 2 years, he went to Tahiti, where he was the resident naval officer. They never saw a bomb, they never heard a gun fired. They are the most beautiful women on earth, because I went there afterwards. And when I was there, I met the British consul, Freddie Devonish, and I said, Freddie, did you know during the war an English naval officer called Tony Rankin? He said, ah, did I know him, old Wham Bam Rankin, I'll say. Thank you very much, and that's all I wanted to know.
One of the things I do remember about the army very briefly, just complete, because I always remember extra things as soon as I've stopped talking, was that they forgot in the whole of my 18 months to teach me how to fire a rifle. I did not learn. For some reason, they just forgot to teach me how to, which is quite extraordinary when you think about it. So if some of my shooting seemed imperfect sometimes as the Brigadier, doubtless it came from there, that I was never properly trained to fire a rifle. Quite extraordinary, isn't it? I'd have been a lot of use in Korea, not knowing how to fire a rifle. I did finally get to do it in 2 weeks after I finished my National Service. They called you back for something called Z Reserve. And I finally did learn in the last 2 weeks when I was out of the army anyway. But there you are.
You know, talking about rifles, when I was in the lower deck of the Navy, there was the invasion scare. We thought that the Germans were going to invade England. That night, all over England, everybody expected invasion. And we were sent out into fields in the lower deck sailors, and a lorry came round and issued us up with rifles and pickaxe handles to repel the invader. I looked at this rifle and I said to the chief petty officer, Chief, excuse me, but this rifle's got a solid barrel. And he said, yeah, I know, son. He said, the idea is when the parachutists come, he said, nip out and break the buggers' legs before they land. That is true, and that is absolutely true. And my mate said, well, what am I supposed to do with a pickaxe handle? He said, well, same thing, you know, before they land, you know, like that, all bam, wham, that's it. And that was what we had to repel the invader with. It was as bad as that. If it hadn't been for what we call the Home Guard. Do you know that the Home Guard in England, which were all the old gentlemen that were too old or the infirm that couldn't join the services, do you know they were issued with pikes? Do you know what a pike is? Like a medieval pike, and it was tubes of steel with a spike on the end of it, and that's what they were given to repel the invader. I mean, Hitler would have arrived with his panzer divisions and said, no, it's no good, boys, turn back. I mean, you've seen Dad's Army? Well, if you haven't seen it, it's the funniest show. The best. It should have been shown in America, all over America for years. I despair of what you said. Wonderful show.
Okay, well, your questions are really interesting and different. Are there any more? Yes.
A question for Mr. Pertwee.
Yeah.
Earlier in the panel, you were telling us about your jokes that you played in the set of Doctor Who. Could you tell us about some of the jokes you played in the set of Wars of Gummidge?
No. I'll tell you why. because I was so busy in Wurzel Gummidge, because in Wurzel Gummidge I did have the input. The producer, sadly the director who sadly died last month, James Hill, was a very good friend of mine, and the writers, Keith Waterhouse and Willis Hall, two of our most eminent playwrights, gave the director and I free rein to do what we liked with the script. So I used to work on the scripts before we went on location, because everything was shot on film in Wurzel Gummidge. And so when we did the casting, we did the rewriting, and when it was on set, I'd be sitting with the director. So there wasn't time to mess about. We had an enormous number of laughs that just came out of the situation, but we didn't set anything up at all.
I'd like to just mention my view of Wurzel Gummidge. When I first saw it, I thought it was one of the most brilliantly technical programs. I mean, first of all, we all like things on film. That's why The Demons, we think, was so successful, because of the studio strike at the BBC. And obviously, 35mm film, or in those days, 16mm film. But Wurzel Gummidge really was an astounding thing, not just because John was the lead, but the whole idea of this head, and I mean, the voice and the head, and everybody in England was like hypnotized by it, like the Wurzel Gummidge voice, and I'm going to put on me thinking head. And to actually see this head go on, and the way they edited it, it was just a wonderful piece of work. And,
the interesting thing is, we got the idea. I said to the writers, we've got to find some way of getting Wurzel out of that one character. Because it's going to be boring to go on, for a long-running series just as one character. And I then came across, I had a sort of dream in the middle of the night, but I said, that's it. The Crow Man, for those of you that have seen it, he was the magic Crow Man. Actually, for those that have seen it that would understand, he is in fact the creator. He is the god figure of scarecrows. That's why he we had great things to say about morality and so on. And the Crow Man made all the scarecrows. And he had different heads. So I said, that's it, that's what he does. Wurzel's got a barn, and he's got a thinking head, and he's got a singing head, and he's got a dancing head. So you can write whatever situation you want. All he has to do is, I can't put my thinking head on, and he puts his thinking head on. And that's how we did it. And this idea, of course, I got from Doctor Who, because Doctor Who only has to go into the Tardis, and he can go forwards and backwards in time. And that's what we wanted to do, and we did.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes.
I really enjoyed the Liz Shaw character when the Doctor had to bounce off a companion who seemed to know almost as much about the odd science things as the Doctor did. What did you think of Caroline John and the character, and that she only was on the show for a year?
Well, I think she wanted to go back to the theatre. That's why she left the show. She did, and actually we've seen her very recently. Sorry, I didn't hear your question very clearly, actually.
What did you think of the character, and what do you remember about the actor?
Well, what did I think of the character? Well, I tell you, I was rather busy thinking of my own character, because when Caroline was in the show, I was just starting anyway. And I didn't have time, I must admit, to make any judgments. As a matter of fact, I don't often make judgments anyway, about what I thought of her. I don't know how to answer that question, really. I mean, I know I like the lady very much indeed. I think it's what you thought of her that matters.
I was just working recently with Caroline. She's in our new Bill Baggs video, When You Buy It, which is on sale here. I said this in my previous panel, I'll say it again very quickly. I have a feeling that companions of Doctor Who should be metaphorically strapped to a railway line, bound hand and foot, and screaming help, help, with a man with a top hat and a long moustache leering over her. That's my basic conception of what the figure should be. Katie Manning was tiny, and Liz was tiny, and so metaphorically, they could be on the railway line, and the Doctor would put his cape round them and foot, and he was away and off. And this would work with the screamings of help, help. But they wrote Caroline John's character as a much more intelligent character, and to begin with, they gave her much more intelligent lines, which you pointed out. But somehow, it didn't seem to work. You would need that character, because it's through that character they explain to you what the hell's going on. Because the Doctor gets so technical, and the shows can get so technical, That you need somebody to say, Doctor, I don't understand. Why is that doing that? Why is he going there? Why is he doing... And the doctor says, well, my dear, very patronizingly, he would explain to her. And you can't do that with somebody who's as intelligent as you. And that's really why it didn't work.
The doctor answers, well, my dear, and then a huge one-page speech full of gobbledygook which John had to do.
Which, I may say, I used to write inside of drawers on the backs of doors, and these bastards, they used to hide them and rub them out.
Yes, we did. Benton was one of those characters that would always ask the doctor, you know, and I noticed, like, the doctor, as in Mr. Pertwee, I always used to like, you know, what are we going to do about this Omega bloke? You remember that line, you know? I had some lovely lines, really. I'd love to do it all again, I can tell you that.
We've just been working with Omega.
Stephen.
What did I, Omega?
Yes, absolutely. Stephen Thorpe, we've just been working with him. But you got the bloke. For me, I used to call him the Omega chap. You call him the Omega bloke.
The first thing I noticed about that character, of course, is poor Stephen had these false teeth in him, and he couldn't help dribbling. And there was this huge monster that was going to conquer the whole world, and I had this enormous desire to go up with my handkerchief and say, here, Stephen, let me mop up your spit. It's so many dichotomies. Now, there's a nice word.
Lovely word.
And in the right place, too. Okay, any more questions? Only another 2 hours to go on this panel.
Mr. Levene?
Yes.
You did such a marvelous job of emceeing the variety show last night.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
How did you manage to stick to the scripts of Doctor Who without walking off someplace?
Well, I didn't have too much to stick to, really. One of the most exciting moments for me is when I began to get my confidence as an actor and I realized that I wasn't part of this, well, we didn't know it was going to be a phenomenon then. But I remember when the lines got more intelligent and nice, it's always, when we did the read-through, it's like a heart-stopping moment for this, what I call the smaller part actors. You know, you go through and you look for that all-important word down the left-hand side of the script. And you know, you see Doctor, Brigadier, and suddenly I saw Benton. And I'd wonder, you know, are my lines going to... And they got better and better. And obviously, you know, the characters become more rounded. And of course, you know, I think our glory... Somebody came up to me once and said, you know, what did it feel like to be part of the famous five? Many years ago, we had an author named Enid Blyton, a lady, who wrote a series of books called The Famous Five, and that just happened to be the first books I ever read. I mean, I love the classics. I mean, I love the classics. Shakespeare, you know. I mean, I get his books as soon as they come out. And I started to notice, so all I ever wanted to see was like the name Benton down the side, and when I saw I had a scene with either John or Nick, I used to get very excited because I was excited about being involved, and to that end, this is why I love the convention so much, to let you know how much we loved doing it, and then when you show how much you loved us doing it, how can we fail, you know, with all your love and your understanding and desire to understand our characters, the whole thing was magical.
John, you're lovely.
And I mean that most sincerely. Any more embarrassing questions?
Yeah, I enjoyed Pertwee, your role in The House That Dripped Blood. And I want to ask all three of you, when you were filming like this, with your unit uniforms on, did you ever take those uniforms offset and do something, go into town or something and act like military people or do anything like that? Offset with your uniforms on?
Well, no, I didn't go to... I tell you where I did go, because you had to when we were outside filming, because you only had an hour's break for lunch. When we were filming somewhere, I did go into a pub, but then of course it doesn't take much to get me into a pub, does it? So I certainly went into a pub, but I don't think I ever went to town with the uniform on, because that sort of thing you don't do. You don't really do it. You get into civvies to do that. I don't think I went to town very often, but if force majeure, as I say, there's only an hour's break for lunch and you haven't got time to change, and you want a pint, well, you go and have a pint.
During the war, when I was working at the Admiralty on security staff, which was part of NID, Naval Intelligence and Security, we were involved in all sorts of strange projects. One day I said to one of my sort of brother officers in my department, let's see what people's sensibility is like towards the enemy. So we went to Clarkson's and we borrowed 2 Nazi uniforms of a general and a captain with full Nazi regalia, SS, and we walked from Piccadilly Circus to the top of Regent Street, to Oxford Street. We walked all the way up, and we were not stopped once. We were saluted 4 times. And on one occasion, I returned the salute like that. Yeah. And we got away with it. Now, I mean, this was a frightfully stupid thing to do, because if we'd been shot, it would have been perfectly acceptable. They would have said, well, sorry, I mean, you've got 2 of the enemy walking up the street, we shoot them. But that just shows you how unobservant people are. They're quite extraordinary. I remember when I was Wurzel Gummidge, and this is this hideous makeup, with the carrot for the nose and the straw and the filth and the dirt and the holes in his trousers. And I came out the very first day, outside the village school where all the mothers were congregating, having taken their kids to the school. And as I walked by, and I was rather sort of proud of myself in all this outfit for the first time, and I said, hello ladies, good morning ladies, lovely day, isn't it? Yes. You've gone shopping, are you? And they said, good morning, good morning. They paid no attention at all. In England, it seems perfectly reasonable that you meet a Wurzel Gummidge scarecrow walking about in the village. Absolutely normal.
Well, the only story I have is not related to Doctor Who, but I had the good fortune of appearing in Z-Cars in about 20 episodes with James Ellis, Brian Blessed, before he became Big Brian Blessed. And I, like all young actors, I like to impress my family, and I was married at the time with, we had 3 children, 1 of each, and my mother was visiting. My mother was visiting from Salisbury, which is the town I was born in, and I had this policeman's uniform. I was what they called PC Brian, and every time Z-Cars started, I would be the one on the phone as the camera passed very quickly past me. But I'd have lines like, yes, madam, what colour was your dog? Yes, we'll have somebody looking for it. And I was so desperate to drive home in this policeman's uniform. And so I left the BBC. Now the wardrobe had told me that, you know, if you get caught, this is quite serious, you get caught impersonating a policeman, it really isn't the best thing to do in England, because we're quite strict on that kind of stuff. So I had to drive down the Fulham Road past the Fulham Football, which is like the 2nd or 3rd most famous football club in England. And I remember driving home, and I was consciously sitting down in my car, working on the assumption that if a police car passed me, and obviously they know which, the policeman didn't drive a car like I had. I mean, first of all, it didn't have police on the side of it, you know. And I was very conscious of knowing that if I was stopped, how would I explain it, you know? Yes, I'm an actor at the BBC, and I was like unknown, so to speak, so it wouldn't have made any difference. Well, would you believe it, thinking I was going to get home down the Fulham Road and go up Putney High Street, because I lived at the top of Putney High Street, and ironically, John lives just a bit further at the top of Putney High Street, I didn't realise there was a football match on. And it was just like in a drama movie. It's as though I was a secret agent and had to get into somewhere and get out without being noticed. The crowds going into and I ended up in this traffic jam, stuck in the middle of this traffic jam with about 300 policemen, which you had to have it for. And I can't tell you that moment, I shrank down and down and down. Just to see all these policemen, but they didn't see me, but that was, you know, a uniform story. Bad moment. Okay, yes. Over there, my darling?
Over here.
Thank you.
This one's for Nick. At the beginning of the year, I got to meet Barry Letts and Terrence Dix at another convention, and they had told some, quote, horror stories about your driving of Betsy. And I just want to hear from you on how you handled Betsy and driving the vehicles on Doctor Who.
He drove. Well, there are many rumours about the way I drive Bessie.
Untrue.
Untrue.
All untrue.
I think perhaps the best thing for you to do is to ask the gentleman on my right. In the meantime, when I hear him, I shall plead the Fifth Amendment.
No, it's absolutely untrue. Nick is an impeccable driver. These are all lies. He drove Bessie impeccably, beautifully. He broke several gearboxes and reversed into a few cows.
No, I mean, I think we've done the Bessie stories. I mean, with respect, we've overdone them. But no, we had a few magic moments. I think my favourite moment in terms of cars is, because as I told you, I used to drive John to work in the mornings, is when you had the what I call the hovercraft Who-mobile, John always let me, because, you know, we got on very well, and John used to let me ride with him on the odd occasion we went out on the public roads. And John mentioned one story about when he was calling it, but the time I was with John, when this policeman stopped us. And you couldn't see the wheels, you see, it actually looked like a hovercraft, and I've never seen a policeman look so confused. He was first of all, he was amazed at seeing John, and then he sort of, I just can't never forget the look on his face, looking for the wheels as to how this thing was actually moving, and to see an English copper confused, it's quite an amusing sight. But, yeah, okay.
Gentlemen, could you give us an idea of what age you were when your acting careers became very serious, and what kind of advice you'd give to people interested in going into acting?
Well, yes. I think I started being interested in the idea of acting at the age of 7 when I was at school, somewhere in England. And we were doing a play called The Piper of Hamelin. And I was given the part of the little lame boy. You see, I was already playing for sympathy even at that early age. And I then behaved extremely badly at school. And they said, look, if you go on like this, if you go on behaving badly, we'll take the part away from you. And I was good as gold immediately. So that's when I think I must have started. Later, when I was at school in Egypt, when we had house plays, I played, well, I started off by playing 3 women in the first 3 years. I eventually graduated to men, so it went on at school in Egypt. And then I went to drama school, and the rest is history.
Well, I started sort of quite early too. I played Helen Keller in you know, the lady that did it. And yeah, and I wasn't very popular at school, and it actually came out during the play. I remember the scene, you know, when Helen Keller was hiding in the attic, and she'd been up there for like 15 years, and the Nazis came in looking for her, and they actually sort of, one of the lines was, you know, where was she? And the whole of the audience says, she's in the
wrong character.
Oh,
Helen Keller is a blind lady. I hope you didn't play the part.
Annie Sullivan? No, I don't.
I think I'll pass that question.
Yeah, I certainly should.
We're thinking of the sound of music. I thought you were thinking of the sound of the audience.
Frank. Yeah, no, but the gag was, she's in the attic.
Very good play, very good play.
Very great, yes.
I've been in Anne Frank, but I wasn't playing Helen Keller. I was playing Mr. Jan Dussel, who was a dentist. Smashing play.
I certainly messed up. Okay, I think that actually was the last question. Debbie said it's finished. I've just got one quick announcement that Debbie's asked me to read. Is this like as serious as, I mean, is this as good as it sounds? Just to let you know in the audience that at 2 p.m. today, in the fan panel room, which is downstairs on the way to the autograph area, several fan club newsletter editors will discuss the current state of the Amblin Fox Doctor Who situation, including debunking all of the rumours that are presently circulating. So are we to assume that they have news that we don't know about? Okay, well, if you're interested to see what's going to happen to Amblin, pop down and see. So they may actually have some news, and we are happy to pass it on. Well, as always, I'm Motor Mouth. I will stand up and say this.
Motor Mouth or Motor Mike?
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nicholas Courtney, Brigadier Letter Stewart, and the favourite doctor of all time, Mr. Jon Pertwee. Thank you. Goodbye, God bless you all.